Been investigating terrorism since 1996 when she first reported on Osama bin Laden. She says al-Qaeda has not attacked the U.S. since 9/11 because they can't. Joining us right now, as we met before just a little bit earlier, Pulitzer surprise.
It was a surprise when she won it.
Journalist and contributing editor for City Journal, Judith Miller, as well as James Meigs. And he, as you were here earlier with Popular Mechanics, just saying, look, these conspiracy theories regarding 9/11, you put them all to rest. Are you surprised that 6 years later, we're not so much concerned with Osama bin Laden as we are as this is an inside job?
Well, what's so interesting is these things have actually gained traction around the world because they tell a story a lot of people want to believe. The U.S. has to be the villain in this. And throughout the Muslim world, sadly, you see that viewpoint that Osama bin Laden was not involved in this very widely accepted by majorities, even in moderate countries. And I think to some degree you keep seeing Osama bin Laden pop up to say, no, wait a minute, it was me. And I think that to some degree that's undermining the very source of his power and credibility in that world.
Because rarely do you see somebody actually admit to a crime, and here we've had him admitting it over and over again. He pops up again, Judith, and I know one of the things you talk about.
Chubby form.
Oh, you think he's chubby?
Yeah, he's definitely put on weight.
Oh,
he's
definitely healthy, unfortunately, then.
Unfortunately.
But you write in your article about the biggest concern for America and the rest of the free world is complacency, right?
Complacency, and also making sure, not making sure that we take care of the weapons of mass destruction, of the radioactive material that we know is out there in the world that could be secured. We could be doing a lot more in that area.
Let me ask you about this. After 9/11, here in New York City, we remembered the paranoia, and then remember that a plane fell out of the sky in Rockaway, and people thought that was terrorism. It turned out not to be, just a mechanical problem. But then there was the anthrax, the wave of anthrax letters, and I know you detailed some of that in your book, Germs. Where does that stand right now? Because for a while it looked like they thought they had somebody, and then, you know, they backed way back.
Unsolved. And
how is that possible?
Well, it's possible because biological terrorism is very, very hard to detect. Biological agents are hard to trace. It's hard to know where they came from. It's hard to know how they're distributed. In this case, it was letters, but 6 years after the fact, we still don't know who killed 5 people, infected 17, and put 30,000 Americans on antibiotics.
But the coincidence coming off 9/11 after the attacks, just a few months later, the terrorists were in there, the would-be hijackers had burned themselves, went to a nearby hospital. There were so many things that pointed to an al-Qaeda presence.
Well, the working theory of the FBI is that this was an American, and it was probably an American with some military or defense experience. But they named someone as a person of interest whose life has been ruined, who has never been charged with a crime.
Right.
And meanwhile, al-Qaeda out there is watching and noticing that we have not been able to solve this crime.
Watching us very closely. I guess we shouldn't be surprised that on this day, the anniversary of 9/11, that the National Intelligence Director comes out today, Mike McConnell, saying, hey, what the U.S. really needs to be concerned about are these sleeper cells, right, James?
Well, one thing that we've seen, we've spent a lot of time at Popular Mechanics with the New York City anti-terrorism force, which I think is, even though there's more we need to do, I feel safer with those cops on the beat than any other city in the world. But one thing that we have to remember, there's sleeper cells, there's also these autonomous cells that are simply grow up as
copycats.
You could call them copycats, but they can be just as dangerous even if they're not taking direct instruction from Pakistan.
But I think the most intriguing thing that happened today is McConnell admitted I was wrong. He said, I used to think these cells were ready to act on their own because the Central Command had been destroyed. Everything keeps pointing back to Pakistan. What happened in London, what happened in Madrid, what just happened in Germany, in Belgium, there is a basis and phone calls and correspondence back to Pakistan, Judith.
Well, I don't think there's a central node in Pakistan. I think that the problem is these groups are kind of out there beginning to do their own thing. Last month, the New York Police Department issued a very important report on radicalization. That is, people who are here, who are law-abiding, who suddenly get an idea that the kind of Islam, the kind of Muslims that they were, are not the kind of Muslims they want to be. They become radicalized, and they're the ones who have tried to blow up the subways in London and succeeded, killing 52 people in 2005. They're the people who did Madrid. These are people who may get some training in Pakistan, Brian, but these are homegrown terrorists, and this is the NYPD's big new fear.
Sure. What you're looking at live right now are pictures from Ground Zero. The color guard is